Peter made a point of asking each of the speakers to be brief, which reminds me of a philosophy professor who asked his students what they would do if they had just 1 hour to live. One young woman said she'd spend her last hour in the professor's class. He was flattered, of course, and asked her why. She said, "Because every hour in your class feels like an eternity." Well, I'm no philosopher, but I do feel privileged to be included in the Automotive News Electrifying 100, and I'm pleased to be here in Dearborn this evening among so many of the industry's guiding lights. 2 years ago, we as an industry and GM as a company were in a much different place. I, for one, feel a lot better about where we stand today. In addition to the amazing things that are going on within each of our various organizations, there's also the public perception about the business. Think about that for a moment. Last September, Steve Ratner published Overhaul. In January, Paul Ingracia published Crash Course. In April, it was Alex Taylor's 60 to 0. Forget about what was written inside the books. The titles alone were enough to give you heartburn. Lately, though, the picture's been improving. Last month, Seth Fletcher hit the racks with Bottle Lightning, his book about battery technology. Last week, it was Bob Lutz's new book, Car Guys versus the Bean Counters, The Battle for the Soul of American Business. It's hard not to like that title. And coming in November, we can look forward to a new book on vehicle electrification by Jim Montevelli called High Voltage. Add last year's Jolt by James Billmeyer, another book about electrification, and I think it might be safe to go back to the bookstore again. And why not? The industry really is generating a lot of positive buzz again, and a lot of it is over electric vehicles. 5 years ago, you could count on one hand the number of companies openly planning to build an electric vehicle. In fact, you could count them on one finger, Tesla. Now, just about every car company in the business either has an EV or is planning one, including several companies that weren't on the radar in 2006, like Fisker and Coda. At GM, we're proud to be one of the OEMs that has an EV on the road. And yet, as excited as we are about the Chevrolet Volt, we know it's just a glimpse of what the future holds for all of us. 4 years ago, Volt was our vision for a practical electric vehicle that would be easy to operate, inexpensive to own, and fun to drive. Many said that it couldn't be done. The leap in technology, particularly battery technology, was simply too great. Well, in November, we proved it wrong. End of story, right? In fact, not at all. Bringing the Volt to market is just the beginning of the story because of what happened along the way. Building the Volt required expertise in automotive batteries, electric motors, and power electronics. Expertise that GM didn't have to the level that we needed it 4 years ago. So we set out to get it by establishing the largest OEM battery lab in the US, hiring 1,000 new engineers and researchers, investing over $800 million in electrification facilities, and so on. Bottom line, what started out as a technology proof point has turned into a real-world starting point to push EV technology further and faster than we thought possible 4 years ago. And that's just GM's experience. Many of your organizations have made their own investments, or created new companies, or teamed with others. One look at the Electrifying 100 honorees shows that EV development is creating entirely new sectors within the automotive industry. An ecosystem of battery developers, electronic suppliers, charging station manufacturers, smart grid designers, and so on. Beyond that, the convergence of technologies in today's industry gives us the incredible opportunity to create an entirely new kind of automobile, one that substitutes electric.
MaryAnn Wright, Vice President, Mobile Technology and Innovation Power Solutions, Johnson Controls.
I believe I stand between you and the next round of cocktails, so expedition will be a key. What a pleasure to be sharing the stage with a whole bunch of my former colleagues and my customers and my partners. I mean, it's really amazing to be sitting here amongst the entire value chain that represents electrification and seeing a whole new world order in terms of our sustainable mobility unfold. And I'm particularly proud, as I think about my transition out of Ford and Nancy Joya, who was my successor, along with Sharif Marakabi, who came in and introduced the next generation of the Escape Hybrid, the Fusion, partnered with Azure Dynamics on the Transit Connect, and all of the things that are going on that just demonstrate the depth of commitment and the capabilities that Ford Motor Company has. And then to my new customers and partners, GM and Daimler and BMW, and Tony, my Volt is coming this month, and I'm really excited about that. Just on a personal note, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that I would not be standing here if it weren't for a very, very profound impact in my professional life, and that's Al Kammer, who I think was introduced earlier. And I think for many of us on the stage and out in the audience, those of us that worked with Ford and had the privilege of being coached and mentored and led by Al are better business people and better leaders in general. So as we think about where we are as an industry, there's a lot for us to be celebrating, and that's why we're here tonight. I mean, think about, in particular the U.S., the infrastructure that has been put in place as a result of the stimulus grant, that frankly, those investments probably wouldn't have been made here in the United States. That as we thought about expanding the technology and the capabilities, they probably were going more in the Eastern Europe and Asian countries. If you think about the supply chain and how it's growing both regionally and globally to build the technology portfolio, to build the partnerships. And on the notion of partnerships, the very profound partners that you're seeing, all of us in this room, we pretty much know each other and are working in very, very new ways to not only develop the technologies, but to help build the infrastructure and the enabling capabilities to help us mass produce and see widespread adoption. But I think one of the things that's important to note that the internal combustion engine, the diesel engine, has a lot of runway left. They're becoming increasingly efficient. And what we'll see is a whole portfolio of solutions, all the way from start-stop. We saw Tom G working on that, all the way to full electrification. So I think the point here is that there will be lots of choices for our consumers that best meet their needs, best meet their economics. And then as I think about the role that government has to play, and I think this is a global perspective, is that they do have a role in ensuring that we have aggressive fuel economy and emission standards, but they also have to make sure that they're not at the expense of picking winners and losers, but allowing the technology and the economic model to develop harmoniously while we're adopting and integrating these new technologies. And as we think about, as we want to go forward, this new collaborative model in research and development, not only company to company to the universities, the national labs, we have Argonne National Lab represented here. We really need to see that intellectual capital and that intellectual property not be just enjoyed internally, but making its way out onto the street. And I think this is something, quite frankly, that the Asians have set a model for us to replicate. And as we think about the university curriculums, we simply have got to educate our kids in the new sciences. We have to migrate from an attitude of day traders to people who love and embrace math and science and technology as the way of building a sustainable economic base and a manufacturing base for us going forward. So I think the bottom line here is there's a lot of excitement. I think there's a lot of potential around the technology. And as these technologies come to bear in the marketplace, mass adoption will really depend upon those that meet the performance objectives of the consumer at an economic value equation that they can tolerate. And so I would just like to close by thanking Automotive News.